The birth of Rome, from kingdom to republic. Imagine a city. When it was first founded, it had neither a great army nor enough power to change the fate of the world. Just a small city-state established in Italy. But in time, it grows so much that its name continues to live on for centuries. And this is exactly where Rome's magnificent story begins. Although there are not many definite sources about the Roman kingdom, according to the myths that are told, this city was built in 753 BC by the brothers Remus and Romulus. For this reason, the birth of Rome is seen not only as a historical event, but also as a beginning surrounded by myths. In its earliest days, Rome was not very different from the other small city-states in Italy. However, what would make it different would be the political resilience, military order, and ambition for growth that it would show over time. Until 509 BC, Rome continued its existence as a kingdom. During this period, kings stood at the head of the city-state. But as time went on, the pressure in the administration increased. In particular, the form of rule of the ruthless king Lucius Superbus, which reached the level of dictatorship, drew great reaction from the nobles in Rome. The city was now facing not only external threats, but also a political crisis within itself. And in the end, this tension exploded. In that same year, the nobles in the city came together against the king under the leadership of Lucius Brutus. They took control of the administration and declared that the Roman kingdom had come to an end. Thus, Rome experienced a very great division in its history. The kingdom had come to an end, and in its place, the Roman Republic had been established. This event was the first major turning point that changed Rome's fate. With this revolution that ended the one-man system, a new system was established in Rome. In place of kings came high officials called consuls. With this practice, the powers that had once been gathered in the hands of a single person were now divided among more than one ruler. The reason was quite clear: that no king should ever again establish absolute power over Rome. Another important element that had a say in the administration was the Senate. The Senate was an advisory council made up of elderly, experienced, and knowledgeable people. Moreover, the name of this institution was derived from the word senex, which means old in Latin. As time passed, the Senate would become one of the most important institutions in Roman politics. What this meant was that from its very first day, the Roman Republic was not only a change of regime, but also the establishment of an institutional state structure. However, in that age, only a successful administration was not enough to be strong. What was decisive was the power of the army. Rome knew this very well. The first great military operation in the history of the Republic was carried out against Veii, a city-state like itself. Veii was a rich and powerful city located very close to Rome. Such a neighbour meant both danger and opportunity for Rome. In 396 BC, the Roman army laid siege to Veii. At the end of the battle that took place, the side that won the victory was Rome. This triumph was of great importance for Rome because it not only gained land but also gained economic and political power, but its rise did not always develop in a straight line. Shortly after this first expansion, Rome faced a very heavy assault. Around the year 387 BC, the Roman Republic was invaded by the Gauls coming from Central Europe. The city was burned and plundered by an army of roughly 15,000 Gauls. For Rome, This event was not only a military defeat, it was also a great trauma. Imagine this. A state that has only just begun to grow stronger is suddenly devastated by the attack of a foreign army. The city is plundered. The people are gripped by fear, and it becomes clearly apparent how vulnerable Rome really is. Such a destruction could have lit the fuse of the end for many states. But for Rome, on the contrary, it became a point of transformation. After a difficult war that lasted 2 years, the Romans succeeded in driving the Gauls out of the city. This process became one of the most important events shaping Rome's character, because despite this great blow, Rome did not fall apart. On the contrary, it recovered, it became harder, and began to follow a more determined policy toward its surroundings. This was indeed one of the most important features that made Rome different. Its ability to rise again, even if it was destroyed. After the Gauls, Rome turned once again to its surroundings. This time, the target was the neighboring Latin states. These Latin cities, located in Rome's immediate vicinity, were important rivals, both politically and militarily. If Rome wanted to expand its influence in Italy, it first had to impose its superiority in this surrounding region. For this reason, the Latin battles that took place between 343 and 338 BC were of great importance. At the end of the battles that were fought, the Roman army won the victory and occupied the Latin cities. With this triumph, Rome not only eliminated its nearby rivals, it also became ready for the greater wars in Italy. When one looks carefully at this period, it becomes clearly visible how Rome grew, step by step. First, it lived through the period of kingship. Then, it overthrew its own king. After that, it established the republican system. Then, it began to struggle against neighboring city-states. And after every war, it became a little stronger. Every crisis hardened it a little more. Every victory brought it new lands, new people, and much greater confidence. These early times of Rome laid the foundations of the great empire that would be established later. For the Roman power that would shake the Mediterranean world in the future actually began to take shape here, in the ending of the kingdom, in the establishment of the Republic, in the rise of the Senate, in the conquest of Veii, in the recovery after the Gallic invasion, and in the victories won in the Latin wars. There was not yet a giant empire in existence, but the mentality that would build that empire had begun to form. Rome was no longer just a small city-state trying to survive. It was a new power, beginning to control its surroundings, settling its political system, and expanding its military strength. And this was only a beginning. For before Rome still stood the Samnites. There were the Greek cities in southern Italy. There was a giant rival, like Carthage. And all of these wars would transform Rome from a small city-state into one of the greatest powers in the world. But everything began here, with a city overthrowing its king, with its being born again from its ashes, and with its challenging the world around it. For the first time, Rome had been born, and now it was preparing to grow. For the coming chapters, do not forget to like the video and follow our channel.